Now the effects on GarageBand are huge. They are so capable and there are so many of them. Back in the day when I was playing with my Alesis Quad Reverb, which had 4 effects at once, that's, well, the whole Quad Reverb thing. You could have your chorus, you could have your reverb, a delay, and you could do anything with it, but you can do more with this, which is the free plugin on GarageBand. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, first of all, go through some of the effects using the Drummer app. So if I just go on acoustic drums, let's wait for it to load up, there we go. I'm just going to make it quite a simple sort of groove, no fills. We get this. Okay, so those drums have a sort of ambience with them. Now, if I just go back to my track settings, they've been slightly compressed. Now, the compressor, I've literally just done a video about this, so I'm going to leave that because it's it's not really an effect as such. It's more a sort of corrective tool for your mix. Some of the effects, though, you know, things like EQ, that's another corrective tool. But I'm going to go into the effects a bit more in depth. So if I go to plugins and EQ, what happens on GarageBand is that you get 4 things that you can have in addition to the corrective things, the compressor and the EQ. Now I'm just going to delete the effect EQ. Now let's just play that back. Now the order of effects is highly important. If you have things like a reverb first, for example, that means that it's only going to reverb the drums. It won't reverb things like echoes or any of the phasing or any chorus or whatever you put on it. Let's have a look at the first bar here. Now, these are the effects that are available. You think, oh, okay, well, there's only 10 things there. Ooh. 10 things that are very, very editable and very sort of, you know, well, so many different combinations. Let's look at Bitcrusher first. Now I'm going to explain a little bit about this plugin because people go, well, what does it mean? Digital recording currently stands at 24-bit resolution. That means that when you're recording a wave like this, there are 2 to the power of 24 different levels, different volume levels. It's something like 17 million different volume levels. So the lower you go, CD quality is 16-bit, which is still fine. I mean, most of us listening to CDs or listening to anything are quite happy with 16-bit. But when you start going below 16-bit, you can start hearing this sort of quite digitally sort of sounding 80s digital technology, and that's the idea of this, is to make it sound a bit old school, a bit sort of like the beginnings of digital audio. So if I play the drums, I'm going to just play them back without the Bitcrusher, but then I'm going to bring it in. I'm just going to talk about downsampling in a minute. Sorry, that's without and then with. So you can hear that sort of chattering, because 2 to the power of 8, 1024, I think. Yeah, I think. Get your calculator out. There are fewer volume levels at which you can record at, so it doesn't know whether it's meant to be this one or this one, and it could be halfway in between, so it's going to kind of going that one, no, that and you get this what's called quantization noise. So this can be used as a really good effect. Now if I take the resolution right back up, it goes to 24-bit, which is modern digital recording. When I was working in the studios in London, we had 20-bit. That was the sort of the sort of new thing, and there were engineers who could tell the difference between 60 and 20. It's quite hard. So, but if I just take it right down to, you know, if I ramp the bit depth down, not bit rate, that's a different thing. That's to do with MP3 encoding and compression. This is bit depth. you may want this.
Don't know.
So that is resolution 2-bit. 2 to the power of 2 is 4. So that means there are 4 different volume levels from minimum to maximum that it can store, or that it's playing back. That's not really all that good, and you can hear that it sounds fairly dire. Now, downsampling is a similar thing, but instead of volume levels, we are dealing with the number of samples it takes per given time period. For a CD, that's 44,100 times per second. For professional digital audio now, it's 96,000 per second, or even 192,000. There's quite subtle differences between those. So if I downsample these drums now, you'll notice a distinct lack of top end, and it sounds a bit sort of... Downsampling 3 times. Now the sample rate on here is 44,100. It's CD quality. So if I downsample twice, I only get a sampling rate of 22,050 hertz, which means that your top end is essentially reduced as well. The frequency response, it basically goes, it's half the frequency of your sampling frequency. So if you sample at 44,000, the highest frequency you can hear that it can record is 22, because of the period of a single sine wave represents 2 samples, that one and that one. So that's essentially what it is. And the lower the sample rate, the less top end you will get. Now on my old Akai sampler, you can see a video of that on my channel. That was a 12-bit sampler, don't you know? And it had, I forget the audio resolution, but you could actually ramp that audio resolution down to save memory. Say if you were recording a bass sound that didn't have any top end, there was no need to record any top end because it would be far more memory intensive. On the iPad it doesn't really matter because it's got 58 trillion terabytes of memory anyway, so it doesn't matter. So but the downsampling can sort of simulate those sort of digital machines of old. So there's the Bitcrusher. I'm going to just edit that. I'm just going to get rid of that and have a look at something else. Chorus. What's chorus? It's actually a little bit hard to hear with the drums, so I'm actually going to record another track. I'm just going to put an electric piano track, or maybe just a smart piano track that goes with a grand piano with an auto play on it. Okay, so I'm going to record that. Okay, so there's my autoplay grand piano, fine. Now, I'm just going to make this 4 bars in length as well so that we can actually have the thing on loop if need be while we're playing with the chorus. Sometimes when you set your loops up, it may be nice to have just a little loop so that you can play with your effects. That's kind of how you get your, sort of audition loop that you could get on more expensive sort of digital audio workstations. You could actually copy a section that you want to edit and put it as a different section in GarageBand, and then you can just use that section to play with the effects before you then return to your main mix. So I'm going to take the drums away. There we go, and listen to the piano only. So I'm going to go into my plugins and EQ. I'm going to edit my effects and go and find my chorus. There we go. The beginning of Don't Stop Believing has a piano with a chorus on it. Yes, it's my time, boy. Now, we have a mix control on the chorus which determines how much of that effect is brought in. Mix of 0% will give us just straight through as though the effect wasn't there. And 100% is 100% effect. Now, we have the intensity and the rate. Now, chorus involves adding a couple of signals that are just slightly detuned, slightly out of tune with respect to the original. and then it adds them together at the end, and you get a sound that's above and a sound that's below. If I ramp the intensity up, you'll hear this. How lovely. And then the rate depends on how because the pitch variations are actually added at a particular rate. So we've got something every second. So if I ramp this up now, the rate up as well. It's a sound, you can't tell it's a piano anymore, so you can make your own noises up with this. You know, if you put something in and you can use the effects, and you know, it's not just subtle effects, you can make it go slightly ridiculous. So in terms of a chorus setting on a piano, I would probably have it quite subtle. Now, in my last video, I talked about mono and stereo compatibility. The chorus is by default stereo. That's what it is. So when you listen on headphones, it's doing different things on left and right. Of course, if you want to render that, we could take this and merge it and then put it onto a guitar track or a bass guitar, DI track. So we essentially retain the tonal balance of that piano, but this time the chorus is mono. If you so wished. You can see that video about how to do that. And that's down in the description box. Now, let's go on. So let's get rid of the chorus. Distortion means what it says, really. You have essentially an overloading circuit, a tone control, and then an overall output. So the more drive, the more at the top you get essentially more distortion. You get a sort of a decibel level here. And yeah, that gives you a rough sort of idea of what's going on. Drive 0 dB and the output of 0 dB. Almost the same as having no effect at all. It just ramps the level up a bit, and it doesn't actually do any distorting because there's no drive on it. Now, if I ramp that up, you'll have to take the output level down to compensate. That's why the output level is there. They don't provide a single control because you might want more output, say. And you have a full bandwidth. It's basically a low pass filter, so it'll pass everything below a certain frequency. So if you want only bass, there's your treble as well. Okay, so there's distortion. Let's just go back to the effects and have... Actually, just before I do this, I'm going to go and find the overdrive. What's the difference between overdrive and distortion? Well, that's a tricky one because actually they both distort the signal. Now let's just have a... Now in terms of overdrive on a guitar amp, essentially it means distorting the input valves of your guitar amp. So it's slightly more subtle, and actually distortion is a much sort of greater effect than overdrive. But if you want fine control of just slightly furry sound, you would use overdrive instead of distortion. So even at the top, you've got 24 dB of drive. We have 50 on the distortion. So essentially overdrive is basically on this a kind of sort of smaller scale version in that it does less. So let's just go on. Edit, get rid of the overdrive. So we're still on the same piano sound. Where were we? Flanger. Here we go. Now Flanger. What's the one of them? Well, it's all to do with flanges of tape. So you'd have two tape machines that are playing the same, and you hold the flange of one of them to slightly delay one part of it with respect to the other. So it's a bit like chorus, but you'll hear that the effect is much different. Quite a fan of that. Now the flanger, you have a more sinusoidal sort of modulation, low frequency modulation, which is basically what all of these are. Sometimes they come under, in digital audio workstations, they come under LFO, low frequency oscillators, or modulation. So it's essentially it's in the sort of same family as the chorus that we had here. So Microphaser. Now in my stereo mono video that I just made, I was talking about phasing problems where you suddenly lose a bit of bass. So this is basically a very, very fine control over the phasing of a signal. So there are elements of the sound there where it is louder and elements that are quieter. What happens there, when it's louder, it means that the signals, it basically splits it up into lots of signals and then shifts one sine wave with respect to the other. And what that actually in practice gives you are areas where it's in phase, or that is the signals add together to make a louder signal, and then you get some others which actually act against each other, making it quieter. That's the idea of a phaser, but it's quite a nice effect. It's a bit more subtle than a chorus and a flanger, but it would come under the same banner, those same modulations. So you get chorus, phaser and flanger. So just moving on. Overdrive, we've done track echo. Now, the overall echo is a control that is on the main board here. So if we got, here we go. If I just take the reverb away, if I put the echo on, that is basically an eighth note. Oh, sorry, a quarter note. Da, 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 da. So the echo is exactly a beat long, which is fine. But you may want to control the echo slightly differently according to the instrument. Now, if I go to the track echo here now, I've got all sorts of controls, and the little banner here, time 1/4, that means that I'm going to have every single beat repeated. The repeat rate, if you had 100%, it would technically feed back into itself, and you could do that with all the old echo units, but it has a slight safety feature built in that it won't actually grow, it'll just stay the same. So there's no possibility of sort of over modulating or over echoing. Some people quite like that though, but you need to buy an old bit of kit to do it with. Now, the time, you get all of these different options. You get 1/16 triplet, 1/32 dotted triplet. Let's try 1/8 triplet. Now, for reggae purposes, it's quite nice to have that snare with a ga 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 ga. That is an 1/8 triplet that I've got here. The answer is you can have anything. You can have a half note if you want. Now we have the next control down here from here is called colour. What's all that then? Essentially, the echoes change in tonal quality. So you've got your original signal, and then you've got what comes afterwards. So it's basically sort of trebly over here and bassy over here. And the colour changes for every repeat, so it gets gradually darker or gradually brighter. Then we have a dry signal level. You could take that away, leaving just the wet signal, which is the output of the track echo. I know it sounds like it's still in time, but that's because you haven't brought your dry signal in. If I just play that again and bring the dry signal in, you'll hear that the echoes are completely out of time, or rather the beats where each bar line is out of time. So there's your track echo. Ooh. Edit that, get rid of that, and let's find something else. Track reverb. Now, this is exactly the same concept in that you have a master reverb, which you can set. You can set an overall sort of reverb that you want. But we have all sorts of controls here. Pre-delay, spread. What does that mean? Now, spread is where you can get a mono reverb. If you're listening on headphones, you can hear that reverb is now basically mono. And 200% is this sort of super wide spatial stereo. Play with it at your leisure. So we've got the spread. Now, pre-delay, that essentially determines when that reverb is going to start after a given time, measured in milliseconds. I think it's 200 milliseconds delay before that reverb kicks in. So actually it took a little while to come in. If I just bring up the wet signal and turn down the dry, you could hear there that reverb didn't start till 200 milliseconds later. And there we go. Reverb time, how long the reverb lasts for, 20 seconds I think is the maximum. Why you'd want reverb that long, I'm not really sure, but you have the ability to ramp that up if you like. The high cut, this is how the reverb acts. So the reverb signal, you can actually have a lot of top end on it or none at all. Now if I go back to the drums to demonstrate this, you can hear it. So if I just just get rid of that, add a track reverb, there we go. And this time I'm going to put the drums through the reverb. So it varies how dark that reverb is. Setting lower levels can make it quite realistic. You don't want lots and lots of treble flying about. So that's the reason they give you this control here. And we've got also a dry and wet signal level as well. You can essentially change the reverb time. Now, of course, it might say, reverb in a cavern or reverb in a such and such on lots and lots of digital audio workstations. But actually, you're kind of building your reverb from the ground up, really. So there's the reverb, and then just looking lastly, let's have a look. What have we got left? Oh, two more. Tremolo. Now I'm going to record just another track here. I'm just going to do a piano. Just going to record a single chord. . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . There we go. There's my single piano chord. Mute the drums and then go to find the effects for the piano, plugins and EQ, edit. You get much quicker at this as you use it. And then tremolo. What is tremolo? Tremolo is erroneously on guitars actually a pitch control. So I'll switch my amp on again. So it says synchronized tremolo, which actually varies the pitch of the strings. But tremolo is actually, that's vibrato. Vibrato is where the pitch varies. Tremolo is where the volume varies. So if I play on the piano here, why am I not hearing that? Oh yeah. So it's literally just ramping up and down at a given frequency. In this case, 1.82 Hertz. If I just ramp that up a bit, then you have your proper tremolo like your old guitar amps, like the old Fender amps used to have, and actually the Vox AC30 has it as well. That's quite a nice effect. Stereo phase, what that actually does is instead of the tremolo in the middle going up and down, it flings it between the speakers. So if I try that, listening on headphones, you'll be able to hear that. And lastly, we have the vocal transformer. This is where it sort of gets a little bit funky. Now, at the moment, we've got pitch and formant. You think, oh, what's formant? Every single person's voice has a collection of formants. So if I hear a recording of lots of people and then I hear saying the same thing and then I hear myself, I can recognise myself, I can recognise the sound of my wife, I can recognise anyone else whom I know, because of the formants in their voice. Of course, there are things like accents and pitch, but formants is a big thing. So we can change the formants of something like a piano without changing the pitch. Quite into that. It's quite a nice bass sound. Here's where I put the vocal transformer in, and here's where it all starts to unravel. Problem. So one thing you can do is you can render this. In fact, for some reason, it's staying in time. Now, I think it's more of a problem when we have an audio signal. I'm just going to do that for you because actually the instrument here is compensating. I saw this problem once before, so I'm actually going to record a vocal line. Fun and clean. There we go. I'm just going to turn the studio monitor level down. In fact, I could use a pair of headphones just to record something that goes in time with that beat. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I've now got a track of just vocals where I'm just counting 1, 2, 3, 4 along with the drums. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's try putting a vocal transformer on this track, and let's see how this works. Oh, selected the wrong one. So effect EQ, delete, and we got vocal transformer. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So you can set the pitch or the performance. Now, of course, when you're singing, you could pitch shift it to wherever you like, but you're always going to get the sort of digital processing noises. You could hear there were little sort of little snippets of things going on there. So use this, you know, at your peril, as it were. But you can get some really cool effects, and you can do that. In fact, the delay that I did have was when I was using live loops. So be careful with live loops. If you're going to make something like this, it's going to work on a live loop. That's where the delay was. So there is a mountain of effects. Now, I could go on all day, because if I just go on and edit that, delete that, we've also got audio unit extensions. It's just yet more stuff. More stuff. Reverb. If we look at this, we've got the dry and wet mix, gain, delay time, low frequency, high frequency, randomized reflections. 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm into that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. It's everywhere. The number of effects on this, and you can have all 32 tracks if it's audio only, with effects on each one, and it just keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. Some of these effects can of course be corrective, some of them, or you know, indeed add something to the mix without just being an effect for its own sake. There we go, there's your GarageBand effects.